Part 1. First Contact on the Playground. Expanded explanation. 700 words. The Galactic Education Coalition had long prided itself on uniting younglings from across the stars under one roof, both metaphorically and literally. Orbiting the neutral world of Lycer had been built as a peaceful beacon of multi-species learning. It featured advanced translation fields, adaptable classrooms, gravity-neutral dormitories, and most importantly, a large arboretum dome that served as a recreational area. That arboretum was where everything changed when the Coalition greenlit the Human Inclusion Pilot Program. They had only the vaguest understanding of Earth's upbringing norms. Background files described humans as emotionally complex, physically diverse, and resilient in hostile environments. That final note earned a few chuckles. After all, what kind of child could be shaped by hostile environments in a Type 3 civilization? 5 human children arrived on a Tuesday. They were dropped off by a friendly Terran diplomat shuttle, each one smiling, munching on snacks, and dragging satchels loaded with what looked like improvised toys and tools. They had a warmth to them, that drew initial curiosity from other students. Instructor J. Hall, a seasoned Grelvaxi with shimmering emerald scales and 4 perceptive eyes, was tasked with monitoring the integration process. She made careful notes as the children were introduced, scheduled, settled into their dorm pods. It was at the end of their first full day at the first recess that things took a turn. Recess, for the rest of the student body, was a simple, playful activity. It involved chasing light orbs, solving gravity puzzles, or drifting leisurely in zero-gravity drift rings. It was unstructured time meant for bonding, stress relief, and unfiltered joy. When the light orb activated in the arboretum for the daily Chase the Glow session, the usual crowd of alien younglings scattered in delight. Some tumbled, others floated, many shrieked with laughter, but not the humans. The humans didn't laugh. They observed, then, almost simultaneously, they began. Moving not toward the orb, but around it, Anna, the eldest, barked out short instructions. Flank left, Milo, take rear. Reyna and I will feint right and circle back. They split into formation with alarming precision. One of them rolled behind a moss pile, another vaulted off a vine-laced bench. They didn't chase the orb blindly, trapped it. Within 30 seconds, Milo had launched a makeshift net fashioned from repurposed cafeteria vine fiber over the orb. It hit the ground with a surprised flicker, its motion sensor overwhelmed. The other children had stopped playing. He stared, jaws or equivalent mouth parts slightly agape. Instructor Jaw was stunned. Children, she said, stepping forward. Voice rising, that is, not how this activity is conducted. Reyna stood up and dusted her knees. We assessed the orb's pattern, lured it into a corner, then disabled it. You neutralized it, Jahal replied, incredulous. Milo grinned. It's what we do. We play tag and pretend the orb's a drone. We've got lots of drone games back home. The rest of the recess was silent. No one else dared engage the orb. Later, in the staff briefing room, J. Hal replayed the footage in front of the school principal and to visiting counselors. She paused at the point where 6-year-old Milo executed a diving roll and deployed the net. Did you teach them that? The principal asked. Pale? No, Jahal replied. They came with it. Footage was flagged as anomalous behavior. It was meant to be sent to Earth's educational liaison for review. Instead, it was quietly forwarded to the Coalition's sociocultural analysts that night. Several species on Vireliant 7 had emergency meetings. Quiet alarms had been triggered not because the humans were hostile, but because their idea of play looked suspiciously like tactical coordination. Combat drills in miniature, and the children didn't see anything wrong with it. To them, it wasn't strange. It wasn't exceptional. It wasn't even serious. It was just recess. Part 2. Tactical Tag and the Shocked Observers. Expanded explanation. 700 words. After the first day's incident with the Chase the Glow orb, Instructor Jahal hoped it had been a one-time anomaly. Surely the human children would adjust. Perhaps they had misunderstood the intent of the game. After all, every culture had its quirks. But by the second recess, it was clear. Humans weren't adapting to recess. They were adapting recess to themselves. That morning, before the Arboretum doors opened, Raina approached Instructor J. Hall and asked politely, "May we introduce a game from Earth today? It's called Capture the Flag." Capture the Flag? It sounded innocent enough. So Jahal approved it without hesitation, even encouraging other students to join in. She was hopeful it might promote shared bonding. But just 10 minutes into recess, that hope turned into stunned disbelief. The arboretum had been transformed. Benches were dragged into formations. Hover discs were stacked to create soft barricades. 2 flags had been created from colored cloths, planted in opposite corners of the dome. The humans had split into 2 opposing teams, clearly designated by armbands made from torn napkin strips. The game's rules, it seemed, were simple on paper. Infiltrate the opposing base, retrieve the flag, return it to your team's side. But what actually happened looked more like a military simulation than child's play. Raina's team had constructed a rudimentary command post behind a cluster of bioluminescent shrubs. She issued whispered orders to her squad, assigning roles: runners, defenders, decoys. On the opposing team, Anna was coordinating timed distractions using pebbles and noise to draw attention away from their real movements. Milo and Selk, the same reptilian girl who had watched in awe the day before, were crawling side by side through the underbrush, and it was working. When the Zarn child, Julin, hesitated mid-game to ask for a rules clarification, Raina simply responded, "Think fast," and threw a soft moss ball at him to simulate a tag. Julin shrieked not in fear, but in surprise, and grinned as he scampered off to the sidelines, eliminated. Other students watched from the sidelines, in disbelief. Humans weren't playing a game. They were enacting a mission. The most jarring moment came when Selk managed to cross enemy lines. Her alien form, slender and fast, was the perfect infiltration tool. She moved low and quick, breathing steadily as Anna created a diversion. On the far end of the arboretum, Selk reached the opposing team's flag and hesitated. "Go," Milo whispered from a bush. She snatched the flag and bolted, but not fast enough. Raina sprinted from cover and tackled her. Not harshly, but with enough controlled force to knock her into a soft moss patch. The arboretum sensors triggered a minor alert from the sudden kinetic spike. Instructor J. Hal rushed over. "Explain yourselves," she demanded, flaring her scales. Raina stood up, helping Selk to her feet. "She did good," the human girl said. "Almost made it. Textbook infiltration. Just needed a little more speed on the extraction." Chahal blinked. "This is a game, not training." The children looked confused. "But that's what games are," said Milo. "Right? You practice stuff? Like hiding, moving, reacting. My dad says tag is just training to dodge blaster bolts." Selk, still catching her breath, looked up. "Can we play again tomorrow?" That evening, school's administrators reviewed security footage again. What they saw wasn't aggression, it was organization. There were no signs of bullying, no injuries, and no true conflict. The humans weren't being cruel, they were simply ... precise. And more shockingly, the non-human children were enjoying it. By now, many alien students had started mimicking the human gestures. They made crude hand signs, used eye contact in coordinated play, and whispered plans before executing moves. Games that once consisted of random running had gained strategy, pacing, structure. The instructors didn't know what to make of it. Was it dangerous? Was it beneficial? The answer remained unclear, but the shift was undeniable. For the humans, recess was never idle playtime. It was a time to sharpen instincts, test reactions, and simulate scenarios that echoed real-life danger, even if it was all in good fun. For the other species, the transformation was startling. Recess had once been a simple time of levity. Now, it was beginning to look more like a training ground, and none of the children seemed to notice the difference. Part 3. Concerns at the Council. Expanded explanation, 700 words. The footage from Station Vireliant 7 didn't stay contained. When the station's administrative AI flagged human recess activities for patterned militant behavior, it triggered an automated report to the Galactic Education Oversight Committee. From there, it escalated to the Sociocultural Integration Board. And within days, the videos reached the Galactic Council's high chamber. The initial reaction was laughter. Diplomats watched a 7-year-old Earth girl, Rana, tumble behind cover, issue hand signals to her teammates, and use a sharpened stick as a drone disruptor. She wasn't threatening. She was adorable. But then they saw the coordination. Then came the video where the humans divided into squads, built barricades, and assigned sectors to defend. One clip showed a human boy redirecting a group of Quillery younglings to control the high ground in a mock flag mission. The level of spatial awareness, timing, and leadership was, if analyzed objectively, closer to military training than childish play. The laughter stopped. "Are we watching a simulation?" asked Counselor Jar, a translucent Varnian whose species had no childhood stage at all. "No," replied the Terran ambassador calmly. This is a standard recess period on Station Varelian 7. There was a long silence in the chamber.
Then
Came murmurs, then alarm. "Is this how human children are raised?" one insectoid delegate asked. "In part," said the ambassador. "They're encouraged to be creative, competitive, and cooperative. Games are used to build problem-solving and tactical reasoning. Games," hissed a Braithon general, his voice rough with disbelief. "This is basic squad tactics. I've seen officers with less discipline." Recordings kept playing. In one, Anna and Milo set a timed ambush using distraction techniques. In another, Selkin alien child, influenced by her human friends, commandeered a group of fellow students to launch a counter-offensive on an improvised bunker. They weren't just copying humans, they were learning from them. Are they training soldiers in primary education? A Zaran diplomat demanded. The Terran ambassador raised an eyebrow. Is it training if it's fun? That comment did not sit well with most of the council. To them, fun meant harmless, light-hearted, aimless joy. Their children played with glowing spheres, built floating sandcastles, or floated in zero-G bubbles. The idea of turning a playground into a battlefield, even a pretend one, was a cultural horror. But humans didn't come from gentle worlds. Their ancestors had survived predators, ice ages, volcanoes, and worse. Survival wasn't just history, it was baked into their instincts. Species didn't evolve play around safety, evolved it around preparation. Tag taught speed and awareness. Hide and seek taught stealth and observation. Dodgeball, reflexes and prediction. Every game had a hidden curriculum. To the galaxy, recess was a break. To humans, recess was practice. The debate turned tense. One side of the chamber insisted. This kind of behavior could not be allowed near other species. What happens when one of these games escalates? Asked an anxious delegate. What if a human child accidentally teaches another how to hurt someone? Others argued that the humans weren't hurting anyone. In fact, their games built unprecedented cooperation. Multiple alien children had reported feeling more connected to their human peers than ever before. Selk, the young reptilian girl featured in many of the recordings, submitted a written report herself. It read, "Before the humans came, I didn't know how to lead. Now I do. I'm faster. I'm braver. I know how to think, like their games." That testimony, innocent and honest, shook the chamber more than any video. So the question shifted. Not, are the humans dangerous, but are they teaching others to be dangerous? There was no easy answer. Earth's representative leaned forward and folded his hands. "You asked us to join the galactic community? You welcomed our culture? This," he gestured to the paused footage, "is our culture. We don't raise soldiers. We raise thinkers, leaders, survivors. The galaxy can learn from us." Some delegates remained unconvinced. One muttered under his breath, "What do they become when they grow up?" No one replied, because everyone already knew the answer. The humans, even as children, didn't play to pass time. They played to prepare. And the rest of the galaxy had only just begun to understand what that meant. Part 4. The Cadets Who Came to Learn. Expanded explanation. 700 words. In the weeks that followed the Council's uneasy discussion, Station Vireliant 7 became an unexpected hotspot for academic observation. Scholars, behaviorists, and cultural anthropologists began quietly arriving to witness the phenomenon for themselves. The station's Arboretum dome, once a symbol of calm, was now a breeding ground for curiosity, concern, but for the children, none of that mattered. To them, recess continued as it always had. The human children played their games planned, their mock missions, and welcomed anyone curious enough to join. And that openness was the first surprise for the observers. Humans didn't gatekeep. They didn't scoff at mistakes or exclude non-humans for fumbling a signal. They encouraged others to get faster, be smarter, act quicker. Every fall was met with a nice try, and every win was celebrated not as dominance, but as teamwork executed well. It wasn't long before alien children began changing. Selk, the reptilian student, had become one of the most prominent converts. Initially a cautious observer, she now helped plan defenses during bunker-building games and called out enemy positions using human-taught hand signals. She even began improvising her own maneuvers, blending her natural crawling speed with the flanking strategies the humans showed her. The other species followed suit. The crystalline Zealand, once passive and shy, learned to use its reflective body to create dazzling distractions, helping teammates slip past enemy lines. The aquatic Varnics typically limited to water-based recess areas, found ways to influence games by coordinating traps and acting as communications relay for submerged tunnels. During team capture missions, it was no longer just human recess. It had become a joint training environment disguised as fun. The instructors noticed it too. The once chaotic free-form playground was now eerily structured. Children divided themselves into roles before each game. Some guarded territory, others infiltrated. Some acted as decoys, while others timed flanking runs. There were field leaders, strategists, and even debriefings after each match. And it wasn't just mimicry. Aliens began inventing their own tactics, blending species traits with human frameworks. The insectoid Calavi, capable of momentary levitation, became perfect for aerial recon and tag games. The burrowing Zorak children dug small trench-like pathways, creating ambush points. What began as imitation had grown into innovation. This disturbed some faculty, but it fascinated others. One Grelvasi instructor, reviewing the footage from earlier weeks, murmured, "They're not becoming like humans. They're becoming more than they were." Parents across species began asking questions. Many feared their children were becoming too aggressive. Others, however, noticed something remarkable: confidence, critical thinking, leadership. Traits previously dormant were emerging. It's nurtured by the simple games invented by Earth's young. Still, some students couldn't keep up. The soft-bodied Neloan found the pace of human games overwhelming. She cried during her first attempt at dodgeball after being tagged too quickly. But instead of being excluded, Reyna knelt beside her. "Come on," she said gently. "You're faster than you think. I'll train with you." They practiced every day for a week. The Neloan child didn't just improv, she excelled. By the end of that week, she led her team to victory in a full-session strategy game, weaving between opponents like liquid shadow. The entire dome erupted. In cheers, human and alien alike, that was when the instructors understood something deeper. This wasn't about war. It was about empowerment. The humans didn't view strength as a weapon to lord over others. They saw it as a tool to protect, to uplift, to include. Recess was their forge not for dominance, but for capability. One instructor summarized it best in a field report. The humans do not train for conquest. They train for competence. In doing so, they elevate all those around them. The transformation of Station Vireliance 5's recess protocol is not an act of aggression, but of shared evolution. For many alien children, their worldview shifted forever. They learned not just how to play harder, but how to think smarter, how to lead, how to rely on each other, how to recover after a loss and try again. And through it all, the humans never saw themselves as exceptional. They saw themselves as friends. Friends who just happened to treat every game like a live drill. Friends who laughed while dodging foam balls like laser blasts. Friends who offered a hand after every fall. And so the Galaxy's young learned a lesson that no textbook had taught them. Part 5. Graduation and the Unexpected Test Expanded Explanation minus 700 words. The final month of the Galactic exchange program passed with more quiet observation than direct interference. Scholars and military analysts alike remained glued to live feeds of Station Vireliant 7. But none dared interrupt what had become something extraordinary, an organic training culture. Fueled by human imagination and discipline, quietly reshaping how dozens of species approached cooperation, problem-solving, and leadership, all disguised as child's play. The administrators agreed that recess on the station. It evolved into something beyond its original intent. Though unofficial, many instructors began treating it as a core subject. Game leaders were rotated, feedback was encouraged, and even the most reluctant children found themselves swept up in the current of innovation. Then came the day the station lost power. It began with a low tremor, barely perceptible. A micrometeorite storm, too small to warrant full shield deployment, scraped past the station's hull and struck an exposed maintenance module. Sparks flew, systems overloaded, and in seconds, the central AI locked down most corridors. It's automatic. Doors sealed. Lights flickered to red emergency mode. The atmospheric system shunted into low power mode. Panic began to take root, but not among the humans. Reyna was in the arboretum with the others when the tremor hit. The moment the lights changed, she didn't scream. She scanned her surroundings, took a breath, and clapped her hands twice. All squads check in. Around her, alien children froze. Anna, Milo, you know the drill. Selk, with me. We're heading to the backup panel. There's a firewall shut protocol on deck 2, said Milo calmly. I know a crawl space that goes under it. Do you know that? Selk whispered, wide-eyed. We mapped the station weeks ago, Reyna said. Already jogging. It was part of Infiltrate the Snack Room mission. To the humans, the layout of the station was old news. They had memorized routes, maintenance, access points, blind spots in camera coverage, and system bottlenecks not for sabotage, but because it was fun. They'd made games out of pretending to breach or defend areas. Those drills now paid off in full. The instructors were locked behind security doors on the upper level. They watched helplessly through flickering screens as human children took charge. Within 5 minutes, Reyna's team had assessed which areas were dark, which were flooded with static charges, and which housed trapped students. They split up instinctively. Milo led a small group to open vents to increase airflow, while Anna used a scrap of vine fiber to lasso a fallen cabinet off a pinned Varnick's student. They used chalk to draw arrows on the floor for other students to follow. One human taped a glouse stick to his back and told a group of frightened Quillor, "Stay behind me. We're moving as one." And another Zorak child worked in tandem to clear the path to the infirmary where several younger students had. Huddled in fear, "Cover me," Selk shouted to Anna while crawling across the smoke-filled hallway. Anna, crouched behind a crate, nodded. Go. 3 seconds. The entire event lasted just under 20 minutes by the time emergency teams arrived. The children, led by the humans, had already evacuated to full classrooms, administered basic first aid, and restored partial manual access to the environmental control panel. Not a single child had been lost. Not one injury required more than a bandage. The humans hadn't just stayed calm, they had commanded. In the debriefing later that week, station's principal, normally composed and methodical, stood in front of a room full of officials and whispered, "They saved everyone. We couldn't even reach them, but they didn't panic. They executed. With discipline, focus." These are 10-year-olds. One counselor asked what kind of formal training the human children had received. None, the principal replied. They just played games. Reports flooded in from across the station. Parents of alien children, once skeptical, now begged for their children to be included in more human-led activities. One Breakthan father called it The best command school I've never paid for. Instructor Jal, once unnerved by their methods, stood alone in the arboretum the next day. She looked at the mossy ground where Reyna had once tackled Selk during a game of Capture the Flag. She watched as alien children ran drills with wooden sticks and hand signs, mimicking their human friends. And she said softly to them, it was playtime. To humans, it was preparation for war. But now, it was preparation for everyone.